What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, April 15th, 2020, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday and whatever insanity waits for us at the end of the week. We have a lot to talk about today. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble and ready to answer the phone when you call on in, put you on the air with your comments, questions, and opinions. A lot of anniversaries today here on April 15th. And in a normal year, this would be the deadline to get your taxes in. But of course, that's been extended to July because of the coronavirus. It's the anniversary of Lincoln's assassination at the Ford Theater. It's the anniversary of the Boston bombing. It's the anniversary of the sinking of the Titanic. And it's the anniversary of the fire at Notre Dame Cathedral. So, whole bunch of different things there. So, let's see. We've got... getting on into the news here. Apparently, a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters don't want to back Joe Biden. And I can kind of understand that. It was a somewhat rancorous contest. But more to the point, Joe Biden is clearly deteriorating. And I can imagine that a lot of people who wanted Bernie Sanders are looking at Joe Biden and say, this isn't a substitute. And I would not be surprised to see many of them voting for Donald Trump. In fact, there's already one Democratic state representative who's refusing to endorse Joe Biden and saying that she's going to support Donald Trump. So the Democrats have a very serious problem on their hands. And this is a repeat of what happened in 2016 when Bernie Sanders supporters refused to go along with the chosen candidate. Speaking of the chosen candidate, Hillary Clinton has been compelled or is being compelled to testify under oath for judicial watch regarding her email handling and the Benghazi incident. So any possibility that she's going to try and end run for the nomination, she's going to have to get over that hurdle somehow. I have to be very honest, and yes, it's personal. I'd like to see her in jail. For Benghazi, for the emails, she committed felony violations of Title 18, for which people do go to jail. And there's all the other stuff that's going on all the way back to Vince Foster. So anyway, by the way, remember Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, got caught with his hand in a few little Cracker Barrels around the globe here. Apparently, he's still listed as a board member of this Chinese private equity firm that he said he would resign from last October. But according to company records, he's still on the board of directors. Why isn't that being looked into? Meanwhile, of course, as we head into the final months of the election season, 7 months here, Trump's real opponent isn't Joe Biden. It's election fraud. And the Republican National Committee isn't dealing with this. Trump isn't dealing with this. He started out with his Voter Integrity Committee, took it apart, dumped the whole thing onto the Department of Homeland Security, and the Department of Homeland Security hasn't really done much about that at all. So we're going to have another really crooked election, and Trump could lose because the people who tried to steal the election from him in 2016, they're going to be back trying twice as hard. And Trump had a chance to do something about it, and he failed. He dropped the ball here. All right, getting out into the international news here. Gaza has barely any coronavirus test kits. Apparently, everything that's being sent to Palestine to help them deal with coronavirus is being commandeered by the Israeli government. Apparently, the Mossad is admitting they're stealing personal protective equipment and medical supplies anywhere they can get them around the world. You know, that just seems to be their attitude. You know, Israel first and everybody else can have the leftovers. So apparently Sunday, Israel allowed just five test kits from the World Health Organization into Gaza. Meanwhile, of course, the United States and Israel are teaming up to thwart the war crimes probes. This is Palestine has gone up to The Hague, to the International Criminal Court, and their chief prosecutor is out there saying, yeah, there's a prima facie case for war crimes charges to be brought against Israel. And of course, the ICC is supposed to be independent. And if they knuckle under to Israel and the United States, basically destroy the credibility of the entire Hague. Right, the Air Force has deployed their first laser weapon systems overseas. We've been hearing about laser weapons for quite some time. They've been in development. They actually have one that they put together at the Air Force Research Laboratory, and it's being put out into the field to combat drones for a 12-month field assessment. And they're going to evaluate if this directed energy weapon system can be a game-changing capability to defend high-value assets from drone swarms or drone attacks. Several systems that they'll be evaluating over the 12 months include the Raytheon High Energy Laser, the Raytheon High Power Microwave, and the AFRL Tactical High Power Operational Responder Drone Killer. So we'll see how they do with that. Great if they can get it to work. Alrighty, if you are a computer user and if you are using Windows, and if you are, you have my deepest sympathy here. Apparently the April 2020 patch yesterday came out with fixes for 3 zero-day exploits that were found and another 113 bugs. I have this crazy kind of idea here, and this is kind of going back to like the days of the Commodore 64 and the Apple II, and that is that you release this stuff without any bugs in it because it was all hardwired in ROM anyway. But today the model seems to be, we'll just put it out there with a few thousand bugs, and those end users, they'll find the bugs for us. We won't have to pay them for doing all that work, and they'll tell us where the bugs are, and maybe we'll fix them and maybe we won't. One of the reasons why computers aren't fun the way they used to be. Instead of the computers working for us, we're working for the computers. All righty, getting into the economic news here a little bit. Apparently, Donald Trump's name will appear on the coronavirus relief checks. Now, most people are getting their coronavirus relief money by direct deposit, either based on a previous income tax record or on your Social Security. If you're a Social Security recipient, it should be coming through that same system. But for people who have neither, they are going to have physical paper checks. And Donald Trump wanted to sign them, not personally every check himself, but he wanted his signature to be on it. And the Treasury Department said, no, actually, the president doesn't get to sign the checks. They're signed by the Secretary of the Treasury and one other person based on the amount. But Donald Trump insisted that his name appear on the checks, so they're having to print an additional layer onto the checks. It's going to delay it for about a week. Trump will have his name. He's making decisions based on his ego. And maybe somebody in his advisory council said, you got to get your name on that check there. It's going to help you win the election in November, and maybe it will and maybe it won't here. Now, we had a caller into the show yesterday talking about this, but apparently the Treasury Department has given banks the green light to seize the $1,200 stimulus check to pay off debts. Apparently, banks and debt collectors can get into line before you and grab that $1,200 per person, $2,400 per couple, $500 for each kid check for outstanding debts. And consumer advocates decried this as cruel and unacceptable. The whole point of these payments is for people to be able to feed themselves during this crisis, not to make the debt collectors, happy. Anyway. More than 80% of the tax provisions hidden in the Coronavirus Relief Act will go directly to millionaires and billionaires. It's been branded a rotten, un-American giveaway. And for ordinary Americans, well, we're just getting the crumbs left over from the table. So, 82% of the benefits of the provision will be received by those who earn $1 million or more annually. Less than 3% of the benefits will go to Americans earning less than $100,000 a year. The massive transfer of wealth from you to the already rich and do not need it. Paul Craig Roberts is out there with an article saying that we're still kicking the can down the road until it blows up. He says we need a debt jubilee or the system will collapse. And he's absolutely right. The debt is unsustainable. And that, unfortunately, is an artifact of private central banking. which by design produces more debt than money with which to pay the debt, until the debt overwhelms the system and brings it crashing down. Now, in the past, when individual countries were working with private central banks, when one would get close to crashing, the private central banks in other countries would step on in and restart the scam all over again. But today, because of globalism, it could all come down at once. Would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the people to stand up and say, no more private central banking, no more money created out of thin air. We have an honest money system like this country started with. And then we avoid these problems. You know, we avoid being prey for the money junkies. Now, they had a really rough day on the stock market today, but one stock that's doing very well is Amazon, which is getting very, very rich selling non-essential items to people who can't get the essential items at their local big box stores anymore. And as a result, Jeff Bezos, who's already the world's richest man, saw his fortune grow by $6.4 billion with a B dollars. Amazon's value has hit $1.1 trillion. All of this on the back of the lockdown online shopping. Now, for non-Amazon retailers, sales slumped 8.7 in March, the deepest drop on record ever. Right now, Americans are buying food and not much else. And that is devastating huge swaths of the retail industry. They're looking at iconic American retailers that we've all grown up with. We've seen the stores out there. Wondering they might not be there anymore. May companies, Sears. Jcpenney is looking at bankruptcy right now. As of this year, the national debt will exceed the gross domestic product. And yes, there are other nations whose national debt exceeds their GDP, some by quite a wide margin, but for the United States, it's kind of a new thing. And it's just another indicator. We'll never be free of the national debt. The system is designed to keep us enslaved to debt, or at least imagining that we're slaves to the debt, because that's how it all works. It's like a religion. It only works if you believe that that debt represents something real, that it represents an obligation on your part. Oh. Banking isn't a science. It is a religion. It's a set of arbitrary beliefs that benefit the priesthood, meaning the bankers, the money junkies. And it works as long as everybody is raised to believe this is how it's supposed to be. And there's no other way to run an economy. But of course there is another way to run an economy, the way this nation started. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call now. Joe in Tennessee, aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, I wanted to talk about these stimulus checks that are being mailed out with Trump's signature. The story in the Washington Post about this delaying the checks turns out to be erroneous, like most of the fake news major publications and newspapers. And I just think that, I look at this whole story as whether it's Trump's ego or Trump's genius, because, I mean, I could see him just sitting back going, now listen, let me put my name on it and we'll watch their heads explode. You know, because this is an epic troll, if you ask me. I mean, he's got a story, and everybody's talking about how the checks have Trump's name on it. Now, you know how, like, marketing works and everything? People affiliate a good thing with Trump, a check from the government with Trump, and I think it's brilliant. And now it's probably a combination of ego and brilliance, but I think that it is a smart move. I mean, he doesn't lose at all because the checks aren't going to be delayed because of it. That's a lie. But meanwhile, they're talking about the checks that people are going to be getting having Trump's name on it. I think that that's a good story to be projected as a propaganda thing out into the nation. But I have to say, I watch him a lot, and one thing that really bothers me that he's doing, he's always bragging about this $250 billion agriculture deal that they have with the Chinese to buy our products. And I'm looking at it like, do we really want to be selling our food to China right now? I mean, do we want to sell our pork and our soybeans and you know, with what's the possibility of a potential, you know, food issues in this country with the economy collapse and all that? So It's kind of like when he bragged about the price of Wall Street. I don't like when he does that. And when he's bragging about the fact that the Chinese are going to buy like $250 billion worth of our agricultural products, I don't know if that's something he should be even doing right now with the potential of hard times hitting the country. And food might get scarce or could get expensive. And I don't, as a Trump supporter, I wish he'd knock it off.
Well, you have to look at the fact that there's sort of a pipeline, a supply chain of food. They can't just grow it and store it until we need it in this country. In fact, we're already seeing stories where vegetables are being plowed back under the ground to compost, where literally millions of gallons of milk are being poured down drain someplace. I guess they can't get them to the food banks here. And so that's the problem. There's plenty of food out there. It's just getting it where it needs to go. Obviously, with some of our meat packing plants shutting down there, pork and beef might be an issue. But I agree that we should make sure that everybody in America is properly fed first before we start thinking about selling it elsewhere.
Yeah, I just, like I said, I just think that, you got to have a bigger picture sometimes. It's great with business and, having trade and all that, but, we're dealing with the Chinese and I don't trust them at all with anything mostly, And I'd like to ask you one more thing. If it's proven that the Chinese released this bioweapon, should we consider that an act of war? I mean, and I think I'm coming to the point that if the Chinese did do it, I'd be more, instead of going to war with the Chinese, I definitely want to go to war with anybody that aided them in our country. Anybody that had anything to do with this bioweapon that might have been giving it to the Chinese or having any kind of relationship with the Chinese. I think, I'm not in favor of a war with the Chinese, but I'm in favor of anybody in this country that's an American that was, supporting the Chinese in this whole thing. Anybody with any kind of connection with bioweapons that was supporting the Chinese or aided in getting this weapon to the Chinese, they should be put up, they should be charged, and they should be shot. That's just my opinion. I see that there's a demonization process going on against the Chinese. I think that if things don't turn around, that we will be at war with the Chinese. And I just don't think we should go to war with the Chinese with this fifth column of pro-Chinese Americans running around loose in this country. And anybody that has anything to do with the bioweapon is a pretty sleazy character to begin with. But anybody that would trade that kind of information to the Chinese is particularly sleazy and deserves a traitor's fate up against the wall. But that's just my opinion. And I hear a lot of people talk about the Chinese and how strong they are and all that. They are a land power. They're very strong, and they have nuclear weapons. But their Navy would be sunk in about 3 days. They wouldn't have a Navy. And the Japanese could probably destroy their Navy on their own. But the American Navy would make short work out of the Chinese. So
well,
that's
the hard
my
part,
opinion.
the
I don't want
hard part in all of this, the hard part in all of this is proving that it was a deliberate attack as opposed to somebody dropped a test tube. Because given how many people in China became sick and died, this is looking along the order of a laboratory accident rather than a deliberate act of war. And I certainly don't want a war with China. Accidents happen. Now, the United States, by treaty, is not supposed to be working on biological weapons, but now we're finding out that the United States was funding the research that was being carried out at the Wuhan BSL-4 lab looking into bat-carried coronaviruses.
Yeah, and I looked today, and they're going to have an investigation, and the 9/11 committee guy, Tom Kane, is going to be one of the guys leading it. So you know what that tells you right there. So, yeah, I think that you're right, that there's a lot of people in our government, and this is bipartisan, that are involved in these kind of shenanigans. I think a lot of it has to do with, like, Bill Gates and the global depopulation agenda. I mean, a lot of these people in this New World Order, they believe in climate change and they want to depopulate even America, and I think they need to be called on the carpet and investigated, but don't expect it from Tom Kane.
No, we won't get it. Joe, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with another caller after these few words. Welcome back to the show here, and a reminder that the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. We're going to go back to the phones now to Mark in North Carolina. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike? Mike, two things. One is, Joe seems to think we could defeat China just like that. Wouldn't happen. It would be, first of all, if the Russians got involved, it probably would be nuclear, and obviously nobody would win. Second of all, our military today is demoralized, and I believe there's certain indications that they're ready to mutiny. The case with Captain Crozier was an example. So, they are picking from the bottom of the barrel these days, too, to get into the military, because people don't want these wars anymore. They see how we view. And the other thing is that, I don't believe China purposely picked a bioweapon on us, because they would have had to do it to themselves first, and that doesn't make sense. I mean, they destroyed their whole economy. If it was a bioweapon, like I said, either Gates and company did it, or Gates, Fauci, and the boys, or it was done by accident. The other thing is,
accident is what
probably, if it was a bioweapon. The other thing is, as far as the stimulus goes, Mike, this is an example of why I say if we don't watch it, people are going to get fed up totally with capitalism. We will have socialism, whether you like it or not. The idea of taking this money that people desperately need and letting the banks pay off debts with it is obscene. And the other thing is to bail out these billionaires is even more. I don't know which is more obscene. People are sick and tired, Mike. You're not going to put up with it much longer. All right. I mean, you're going to have. If we don't get the country back on its feet soon, you're going to have people starving in the streets. Okay, and you're going to also have rioting in the streets, and it's also a recipe for revolution. That's what this comes to. So the country better wake up, Mike. I don't know where we're going. And the other thing is, I saw Mark Cuban. I was listening to radio earlier. Mark Cuban was on one of these business channels, and he was saying, "Well, we need to change our way of production and use more robots." Again, another example of a billionaire out of control, and why this country is going to go towards socialism if this continues, because we need to get rid of the robots. We don't need to use more of them. And that's it for my piece. Thanks.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Peter in Los Angeles. Hello, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I agree with the earlier caller definitely about we should not sell food to anybody until we can guarantee that we're going to make it through the year here. And that's not a guarantee. Is all the we can't fish in the Gulf. We can't fish in the Pacific to a great degree. Beef and pork, we know what's happening there. The supply chain problems, they're going on everywhere in the world. There is going to be a food shortage. However, of course, we've also guaranteed, like even when the U.S. Marines and the Army were being instructed to use scarves as masks, we did indeed go ahead and give those to Israel. That's pretty well established now. They tried to switch it and try to hide it, but we did indeed supply them with 1 million masks to the IDF when our own guys were being asked to use scarves. We've also had an agreement in the past where no matter what kind of oil shortage we have here, we will guarantee Israel's oil. I know you know about that. You've talked about it before. So if anybody is running us, it's them. And if there's any inequality with the trade, it's them as well. I absolutely agree with Mark. We would. It's not even a gimme with the U.S. Navy. With all the monies invested with the carriers, with totally sitting ducks. And I can tell you, as a former lieutenant colonel in the Army, we cannot go head to head with the Russians or the Chinese on the ground. No way. There's no way. Correct. So I guarantee you that's true. And so they have internal lines. They're in the Eurasian landmass. They won't need to use the sea lanes as much as we do. And, it's easier to cut us off than it is to cut them off. So at any rate, that's my 2 cents on that, Mike.
All right. Well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go. I'm going to hold the next call until after the commercial break here. Apparently, the people over in Africa are dealing with yet another locust swarm. This one, they're saying, about 20 times larger than the first one. And that was the worst in 70 years. So, I mean, let's see. We've got locusts. We've got a plague. Krakatoa has erupted. Boy, this is like a grade B disaster movie of all the things happening. Next, we're going to have Planet X crashing into the moon and crashing into the Earth and everything. We're going to take a break for commercials. Back with a phone call after these few words. And welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Keith Rogers. Keith, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
I want to add to your Planet X theory.
Okay.
Here's something to add to your list. On Global Research is a nice article called NATO in Arms to Fight Coronavirus. And this is where the 30 NATO foreign ministers have all met on April 2nd. And this is to fast track military equipment down towards Venezuela. And it's pretty interesting about what they have planned here. And this fast tracking allows pass through Europe's airspace for military flights. Of course, all the civilian ones are grounded there, But they're under the auspices of this coronavirus. But of course, all it does, it talks about the number of ships down there, their dual functionality of what they're going to serve as. And it would look like, to me, like while we're distracted worrying about China or something like that, they're going ahead and with the U.S. with their Navy Armada down there already. That, and with the U.S. shale oil in a total collapse right now, that this capitalism greed, as Milton Friedman said, is that they're going to go after Venezuela's oil.
Well, again, it's not so much the oil as what currency it's being sold for that's at issue, because right now the petrodollar is kind of trembling as more and more countries trade for oil in currencies other than the dollar. But yeah, they want Maduro out. They realize Guaido can't replace him. So the push now is for both of them to just step aside and allow the United States to choose as yet unnamed replacement as leader of Venezuela. And of course, they're not getting any takers on that. So yeah, it does look like they're ramping up toward an invasion. And they may replay the Panama scenario where they've already accused Maduro of being a narco-terrorist, whatever that's supposed to mean, which is what they did with Manuel Noriega, who is now making license plates in a Florida prison.
Right. The sad part about this, Mike, is that this is where we'll have a lot of Americans sit there, where we have to constantly, listen about immigration and stuff. When the U.S. went into Syria and they've caused millions to get displaced into Turkey and Iraq and even the Palestinians like that, as people move because of these conflict zones, that if the U.S. does go down in there in Venezuela, you can think of the millions of Venezuelans that are also going to have to start moving there and, seek jobs and whatever like that. And sadly, America will be on the board. And of course, it gives those that are in power a good reason to sit there and demonize whether they're migrants or how they're getting in there and stuff, And it's the same scenario: create the problem and then offer a solution. But it's sad there, as you mentioned there with Noriega with Panama, of the thousands and thousands of people get killed. And no one ever thinks of that because the U.S., all it cares about is being an oil broker for the world because of Japan and stuff like that, And I have said this for a couple of weeks now. You watch to see if the United States does start up there, which industries it starts first. If it's going to go with, like we already know that Lockheed Martin is hiring 1,000 and expects to hire 5,000 more. These are all in the War Department.
Yes.
And of course they pay big job, money and stuff like that, but they're not in the humanitarian stuff to get people eating and stuff. You should be, as you mentioned earlier, the fact that we should be restoring our infrastructure as far as food and stuff. So I think this is kind of a trend that shows you that it's the same old thing, just another day in office there, that we're going to witness more wars as the U.S. is allegedly fighting this coronavirus, which you think they would divert all their efforts to. They're out waging war. So
Yeah.
it's a sad situation, and it's going to cause immigration. It's going to cause more people sucking off welfare and everything like that, you know. So anyway, I just want to pass that around there. But the article again was it's on global research, and it's called "NATO in Arms to Fight Coronavirus." Okay.
Okay. We'll take a look at that. Thanks an awful lot for your phone call.
Yeah,
okay, we're going to go back to the phones here to Joe in Nome. And Joe, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
To add to your apocalyptic theme there, you're talking a minute ago, I'd wondered if you'd heard about this Comet Atlas
Yes.
on the 29th this month.
Yes.
Size of Manhattan is 3.5 million miles very far away.
Yeah, it's pretty far away, especially if you have to walk.
Apparently, it's going to have a tail 4 times the apparent diameter of the sun, and tail contains cyanide.
Sure. They're not sure. Comets are very unpredictable. In the last report that I saw, it looked like the nucleus may be breaking up from tidal forces. So instead of one Comet Atlas, it's going to be a little tiny cluster of small comets.
Oh, did you hear about that one that hit Nigeria? Akur, Nigeria.
The meteor.
Yeah, right. Well, meteorite. Yes. You did? Oh, okay. You reported on that. Well, all right. Well, that was all I had. I just thought I'd add to that apocalyptic picture you had going there.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to the comet, and hopefully it will be a spectacular one. But again, like I said, the last report I had is that the nucleus was breaking up, and whether that will make it brighter or dimmer remains to be seen. Comets are very unpredictable. I mean, the orbits are predictable, but their behavior is unpredictable. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Mitchell in Memphis. Hello, Mitchell. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike, what's going on? Listen, I spoke to you, I believe, on the 8th of this month, last week or whenever, and we were talking about the CAFR and the CAFRs and the CAFR funds. And there seems to be a lot of confusion about this, myself included. I did find an article put out by an Ellen Brown, an attorney, founder
yes.
of, you know Ellen Brown, and if I'm not mistaken, Ellen Brown was on your show.
Yes, she was.
Okay, and I found this, and I think she was talking about the Bank of North Dakota, and she was speaking in terms of, following that debacle of 2008 with the monetary situation. But she put out this article, The Mysterious CAFRs, How Stagnant Pools of Government Money Could Help Save the Economy. And she's talking about an accountant, Walter Burian, says has been trying to rouse the public over what he contends is a massive conspiracy and cover-up involving trillions of dollars squirreled away in funds maintained at every level of government. And then it says his numbers may be disputed, but these funds definitely exist, as evidenced by the comprehensive annual financial report, CAFRs, required of every government agency. Then, lastly, if they don't represent a concerted government's conspiracy, what are they for, and how can they be harnessed more efficiently to help the financial crisis of state and local governments? Now, that was Ellen Brown, and I think she's a reliable source. You
yes.
obviously vetted her out and brought her on your show. She's of the order of, I guess, a Catherine Austin Fence or something. I had referenced to you on last week about a Minivan Jack. I called Minivan Jack. He put out the YouTube video of the CAFR swindle, the biggest game in town. I took it upon myself to get in touch with him, and he spoke with him about an hour. It was a good conversation. I asked him if he stood by his video back in 2011. He said very much so. So he's also talking about this, these funds, CAFR funds, and all this money. Now, Jerry Day said he would be delighted to go on your show. I think it would be a very good interview. Jerry Day was on John Stadtmiller's show on August 9th, and John gave him 2 hours. Would it be possible for you to do an interview with Jerry Day about this CAFR business? And also, he's going into some other areas that are very pertinent to in regards to today's issues. What do you say, Mike?
Well, I'd love to have him on the show. Could you email me his contact information? I don't want to broadcast it out publicly so he doesn't get harassed.
Could I give you his website?
Yes. Go ahead.
JerryDay.com.
Well, that's easy.
He's about your age, maybe a little bit younger, but he's very, very straightforward. John Stadtmiller stumbled across him also, and this guy's very effective. You know, he's not playing partisan politics games. He's a straight shooter, and he's very gifted, like you are, in disseminating information. And so I think it should be great for your audience. And plus, we can get some clarification on this Kafir business. If you can get in touch with him, and John has his contact information also.
All right. Well, I'll get in touch with him, and we'll get him on the show. I need to get more guests on the program anyway.
I think he would be a good one, Mike. He's already been vetted. I think he'd be a very good one. Hey, thank you, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Paul in New Jersey. Welcome to the show, Paul. What's on your mind today?
Hello, Michael. Michael, I was very alarmed by that article in the Daily Mail that pointed out that the U.S. government gave $3.7 million in a grant to the Wuhan lab at the, and they're at the center of the coronavirus leak. And for one, the question is, why would we give money to a lab? Here it is, working with very toxic and biologically hazardous materials that's located in an urban area. I mean, it's all right. Let's just assume they were incompetent, as we expect for most government employees. But at least now, and here's a chance for Trump, instead of pointing the finger and blaming the Chinese, why don't we start collectively coming up with lessons to be learned, work with the Chinese, put aside the bellicose language, and urge the relocation of these labs to maybe remote locations. You know, when we did nuclear testing, we brought that out to Los Alamos in the middle of New Mexico, right? And likewise, if you're going to do any of this research, the Chinese have the Gobi Desert, perfect place if they want to set up any of this biological experimentation. And so I just don't think that, especially with the power of China and the ridiculousness, because let's be honest, some of these pundits, speaking like trying to drum up a war with China are mad. It's just crazy talk. It's not going to happen. We're not going to have a war with China. It would be too big of a disaster. So don't even engage in that rhetoric, fellas.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is, we just take the hit. China's clearly taken the hit.
Yes.
Assume it's a mistake on their part. And by the way, it's a mistake on our part. Like I said, they toured American people who probably have CIA relations, working with these agencies and funding these grants that were given to Wuhan, right? They toured that facility. They observed their practices. And obviously, they must have thought they were running it in a competent manner. So, the way I see it, we're partly responsible. It's been proven, as that fella said, how we transferred it from the University of North Carolina, some of the working stock that they used for drumming up this coronavirus. All right, so our hands are all over this, too. We're not innocent in this. So why don't we just work collectively? Now, here's the concept of mine. It might sound ridiculous, but why don't we, and this goes for the United States too, not only do we need to close the Fort Detrick biolab, we need to, if these people really need biolabs, how about picking some remote island? America has some remote islands.
Like
right?
Plum
Maybe
Island.
we could take. Well, that's not that remote. That's close enough for a bird to fly with Lyme's disease, in my opinion, from off the coast.
Yeah, but they shut down the facility on Plum Island and they moved it onto the mainland. I mean, they're going in the wrong direction with this stuff. And by the way, Fort Detrick has, at least for the moment, been shut down. Not the entire fort, but the USAMRID.
Maybe they could locate it either a remote island, maybe one of the Aleutian Islands.
How about Antarctica?
Right, but if you want a more tropical setting, maybe we could make a deal in Guam or with one of these small island nations or Bikini Atoll. And so it's more of a tropical paradise for these biolabs. And then we have to set up another island, which would be...
There's Christmas Island. It's located south of Hawaii, and it was actually used for biological weapons research in the past.
Exactly. And then you need another, secondary island, which could be the quarantine island. So people coming out of that have to be quarantined before they're released into the world. We have to have a halfway spot. And, and then if something goes wrong at the biolab, we nuke it. And those are the rules, and all the scientists, they're so interested in their research, and they want to do so much for mankind. Let them work under those conditions. If you want to experiment and play God with viruses and all the rest, you have to do it over in this safe location so you don't endanger the rest of the world. And this is the perfect opportunity. I'm giving this to Donald Trump. This is what you need to bring up here. Lesson learned, so this never happens again. So the world, we can set example for the rest of the world and get other nations to join us in this endeavor just to isolate these labs, stop funding them, and end this shenanigans.
I agree. And I think the reason that the U.S. is trying to farm some of this work out to other countries is because technically under treaty, which doesn't have any way to enforce it, there's no verification whatsoever. But in theory, the U.S. government is forbidden from engaging in this kind of research.
Yeah, and that's always the cheap out, is to farm out. It's just like why we outsource our companies and our manufacturing. There's some other so-called reason or rule that the oligarchs wrote, right? And in a sense, they might have written that law just to have it done overseas for lower costs and fewer legal repercussions. But the world is round. It's a closed space, and these things can come back to you. It's like that line out of Jurassic Park, where if something gets out of the cage, once it's out of the cage, it's done. It's throughout the whole world. That's the problem with these biolabs. Once you create these things, and once it's loose, there's no stopping it now. And so Donald Trump, do the right thing. Step up. Write some global legislation. They love globalism, right? They love this stuff. He can be seen like an important man, and just start relocating these facilities to some remote location and have all that stuff done. Some, ignored location. Anyway, thank you, Michael.
All right, you got it. We're going to switch over to Mark in Montana. Mark, I'm going to have to take you through this next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. I'm the oil field guy that calls you on occasion.
Yes.
Thought I'd kind of update you folks on the oil situation. Oil is at $20 a barrel. West Texas is pretty much shut down. I think they're anticipating about a 50% unemployment rate. I took a risk and drove up to Oklahoma City, where I have a buddy that lives, and he and I are going to both try to get in with Amazon. Amazon's definitely hiring. I can't go home to Montana because I live on an Indian reservation there.
And Mark, I'm going to have to put you on hold. Mark, I'm going to put you on hold.
Okay.
Don't hang up. I'm coming right back to you after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in Montana. Although he's not in Montana, he's in Oklahoma trying to seek work with Amazon. And Mark, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Sure. Like I said, back home in Montana, what the idiot governor did is he closed all the casinos down. That's like the number one, well, probably the number two source of income after mining and maybe after farming. So the Indian reservation where I live, the Crow Indians have shut the whole reservation down. No one in, no one out. So, I'm actually going to be, maybe from now on, be marking Oklahoma. I don't know. I kind of like it here. It's not Montana, but it's not Texas either, thank God. But I don't, this is a prediction I'm going to make. With oil at $20, we are exporting a lot of oil right now. A lot of it's going to South Korea and Japan. I don't see the oil industry correcting itself probably in my lifetime. I don't see oil back around $80 or $90 in my lifetime. And I also don't see this economy coming back in my lifetime to where it was before. I think we're going to use this, I call it a fake coronavirus thing, or phony virus. I think they're going to use that to just keep this economy pushed down. I think it's a push against Donald Trump, and it's a big push against the West. That's my opinion.
Okay, well, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go, and we're going to switch over to John in Vancouver Island. John, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How are you doing today?
Doing fine, thank you.
Okay. I wanted to phone about, I heard that, I think it was Pakistan shot down India drone the other day. And they were ready to go to war. I don't know if you want to call it that, but they were at each other's odds. And Russia walked in and said, "Hey, Kermit, we got bigger fish to fry." I wanted to know if you knew anything about that.
Well, not beyond what you've already said, but Pakistan and India, they've been making stink face at each other for a very, very long time, and they're always on the edge of breaking into conflict. And once again, Putin has shown that he's a global statesman.
Yeah. So yeah, I just thought, Russia is now the new peacemaker of the world. I just wanted to see if you knew something about that and get some confirmation.
No, I don't know any more about it than what you just shared with us.
Oh, yeah. Oh, and by the way, when you said you're getting tired of this coronavirus?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought maybe we could talk about intercontinental time-traveling Sasquatches.
By golly, there's the topic for the show.
Okay, you have a good day, buddy.
All right, thanks an awful lot. Okay, the phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, according to this article, we got to take a break for station identification. We'll be back with more news and phone calls after these few words. And welcome to our show, hour number 2. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, Donald Trump has backed off his royal, we have total authority over the states, and now he's saying he's willing to work with governors, some of whom want to open their states early and some of whom want to think that May 1st is simply unrealistic. Here in Indiana, we're supposed to open up on the 20th, just 5 days from now, which would be kind of cool. So Trump's bluster has kind of faded away, and he says he's going to work with the governors. All right, we're going to take a phone call now from Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
You're not opening on the 20th, Mike. I have to tell you that. You know cases are on the rise in your state, right? Did you see those reports?
Yeah, we have 3 of them in Spencer County, but in the middle of the state, there's this Marion County, and boy, do they have cases there.
In Missouri, Mike, they got cases sprouting up, and South Dakota, where you talked about the meatpacking Smithfield, they got 400 workers sick. 400
Yes.
workers times 3. So 1 to 3 people. Do the math, people. That last call, the caller who says that he thinks this is a scam, it's not, man. Mike, if you go to the store, you get in, you get out, you don't talk to nobody. You get a mask on and gloves. I don't know, Mike, it's Walmart. If you go to Walmart, are they making you wear a mask over there yet? Or is there any state ordinance yet that are making you wear a mask and gloves? They are in New Jersey.
We're not being compelled. We're being asked. And Claire and I do wear masks when we go out to the stores. More is kind of like setting setting an example for other people here. We're sort of acting like influencers now.
Because that's the problem in Sweden. I talked about Sweden, and 2 days ago they had 22 deaths. As of last 24 hours, 114. So it's obviously went up, and they have that whole, can you please do, keep 6 people. That doesn't work with human nature. You have to actually enforce people. I hate to say enforce people, unfortunately. Like over here in Walmart, you go there, they're giving you a mask and gloves for free. Why would you not wear it? But people, some of them, not most people are wearing masks and gloves, but there's a few, they take the mask off once they're in the store. Mostly men, white men, unfortunately. But they're just taking them off because I don't know what their problem is with that.
Well, they're not exactly comfortable.
No, these are actually just those light surgical masks, the green ones. Nothing that's really heavy on your face. It's not like a cloth mask or anything. But they just don't want to be bothered by it. And you know what? It's actually for your safety and other people. It's just, and then how long are you in the store for? Actually, also, it's just you go in, you go out, you get your stuff, and you get out of there. You don't want to jibber jab with anybody. But Mike, with the real quick on the oil again, it probably will get to 30, and that's it. Yeah, man. Like, oil's finished. And you know what's funny, Mike? They'll get bailed out, and where's the money going to go? It's going to go to they're going to give it to the banks they borrowed the money for, plus the banks are going to get bailed out, right?
Right.
So what a con job, right? What a con job. But man, we are in some serious crap, and yeah, I'm Sebastian in Sweden. You take care of yourself, Mike, your listeners. Tom from Florida, you got cases ticking up over there. Your state's turning red. It used to be pink. There's cases popping up all over the country. So, everybody take care of yourself. And like I said, stay street smart. Get what you got to get. Get out of the store. Go home. Keep your family safe. Have a good show, Mike.
All right, thanks an awful lot, Dustin. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open here. Apparently, somebody leaked out a document confirming that CDC and FEMA are looking at May 1st as when they want to start reopening the country, starting with schools, summer camps, and churches. And they're going to be establishing teams of contact tracers to track potential coronavirus victims. So everyone's kind of focusing on that May 1st date here. Now, the FDA and the FTC are down on Alex Jones' case over at InfoWars, and apparently they've issued warnings that he can't basically make claims about coronavirus being treatable with silver-based products. And apparently they've got a silver-based toothpaste and mouthwash. And I think in other times, probably most of us would say, oh, well, Alex Jones was saying something he ought to say here. But from personal experience, I know there is merit to silver-based products, and they can be antiviral. And we know that the FDA, has approved products that aren't very good. I mean, they just took Zantac off the marketplace. Vioxx at one point was FDA approved. Silver's efficacy has been known since the Renaissance, since the days of the Black Plague. So I think Alex Jones may be in the right here, and the FDA, as usual, is a captive agency working on behalf of Big Pharma. Apparently, health experts are slamming this chiropractor for claiming that tonic water can be used to treat coronavirus. Well, tonic water, real tonic water, has quinine, and tonic water and quinine were developed to fight malaria. And we know that quinine derivatives like chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine treat malaria and also treat coronavirus. So why wouldn't tonic water be effective? Well, because anybody can go to the store and buy tonic water. It's very inexpensive. And the goal here is to get you into the pharmacy to buy whatever it is they're planning on selling you at a huge, huge markup. They don't want a quick, easy, inexpensive cure. They want something that they're going to make some money on. Kind of like vampires, if you think about it. They're feeding on your lives to enrich themselves. A gun shop in Albuquerque, New Mexico is self-identifying as an essential business. I love that. And plans on opening up in defiance of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's lockdown orders. He's locked everything down, including church services. And I understand there's a court battle going on over that, saying that government doesn't really have the right to shut down a church. And I'm in agreement with that earlier caller. This has been a hideous overreaction. This is 2009 all over again. And the government right now is trying to figure out some way they can save face with all of this. So apparently over in Mississippi, there's another church case, and Attorney General Bill Barr has issued a statement saying government may not impose special restrictions on religious activity. The Constitution says that the government may not pass any laws respecting an institution of religion. In other words, no state religion. But I think technically a shutdown order could apply, but apparently Bill Barr is saying, no, that's not going to happen here. This one really, you have to wonder who got paid off on this one, because World Wrestling Entertainment has been deemed an essential business in Florida, and they're going to resume filming live shows. Pro wrestling, an essential business? Well, I guess it's the gladiatorial games they hope to keep people distracted with. By the way, that's something that I've really discovered being stuck here at home with our cable TV. There's a lot of really bad programming out there. There's one program where this guy goes out and gets deliberately stung by toxic, poisonous animals. Endless cooking shows. I like Forged in Fire, sort of, occasionally. I like The Curse of Oak Island. And I wait every week for the next episode of Westworld, which seems to have kind of missed its stride this season. But other than that, I mean, you look around at some of the stuff that's out there and you say, what were people thinking? What was the elevator pitch that got this piece of trash onto a cable channel? And I think probably that's one reason why people are getting sort of restive and saying they want this stay at home to be lifted. There's not much distraction on TV these days here. Speaking of the WWE, former WWE star Dave Bautista is calling Trump supporters brain-dead morons. So 7 months to go to the election, and already the insults are flying here. Meanwhile, over in Spain, millions of people are being allowed to resume their non-essential jobs as the industrial lockdown is lifted, and the lowest number of cases for 24 days is announced. Italy is getting ready to open some of their shops tomorrow. Everyone's just had enough of this stuff, I think. Okay, Boris Johnson is out of the hospital. He's back at Downing Street, and he issued a very nice thank you to the doctors and nurses at the hospital who treated him. Okay. Apparently, Chris Cuomo is still in the hospital. He was without a fever for a short while, but it came back. And the way the rules are working is you're sent home only if you're fever-free for, I think it's 72 hours. And he made it to 48, and then his temperature went back up to 101. Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci is saying that the New York data might project a turnaround in the coronavirus epidemiology, and that would be a good thing. In fact, I saw an article earlier today saying that the curves are definitely flattening in all 50 states, and that it may not be exponential anymore. Well, ultimately, it's going to be exponential. The question is, what is that exponent? Because if the exponent is very, very small, you get closer and closer to a straight line. Okay, this next story is one that gets back to what I was mentioning about the food banks and everything. U.S. farmers dump 3.7 million gallons of milk every day and plow fresh vegetables back into the soil because restaurants, hotels, and schools have closed due to the coronavirus. Okay, there's a problem here. Earlier today, they had the director of a food bank on Fox News who's basically describing how they operate. Food banks have to buy the food that they're handing out. They require, cash donations to keep them going. Nobody is donating free food to the food banks, and I have to ask why. You know, when you've got thousands of cars lining up at a Los Angeles food bank, when the lines are going around the building and, somebody somewhere's got to say, look, let's get some trucks. Let's get some, National Guardsmen or Army or whatever. Go out to the farms that are getting ready to plow those fresh vegetables back into the soil and just pick it up and bring it into the food bank and hand it out. Ridiculous here. It really, really is. All right, the phone lines are loading up. Let's go to Miles in Maine. Aloha, Miles. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael. Well, of course, the WWE is essential because it's congruent to go with the thinking that's going on about this virus, I mean, you got to believe somebody's getting their neck broken, back broke, and thrown out of the ring, and then the next day they're wrestling. I mean, you've got to have that type of fantasy going on so that they can buy into this nonsense that's going on now. But, as for Doomsday Dustin again, if you're not going to follow him off the cliff and be the next lemming, he thinks something's wrong here. Something, he neglects all the facts that they're inflating the numbers on this, that they're blaming every type of death, regardless of what it's attributed to the coronavirus. And, Steve Elkins works right down there in Florida. And for this spike that Dustin's talking about, Steve Elkins and his wife both work there, and none of them have seen it. And I would imagine that's a pretty good-sized hospital a guy like Steve Elkins works at, and his wife, too. I'm sure they see a lot of patients there, but yet none of them have it. But Dustin's telling us how the numbers going up because he's listening to this media that, I hear him get on here, and even himself will tell you that is loaded with inaccuracies. So I just don't know what's going on with that. But, and I don't blame Dustin. I'm not saying I blame anybody. If you want to wear a mask and gloves, go right ahead. But to go along and buy into these numbers and say, oh, my God, they're going up here and they're going up there. Well, we know these numbers are made up. We know that.
Yes, they are. They're being inflated. Like I said, the government has painted itself into a corner with all this 2.2 million people are going to die and all these people are going to be infected and it's going to be horrible. And as pandemics go, this one pretty much fizzled, which means as a biological weapon, COVID-19 is a failure. And yeah. I think it was a work in progress, probably, when they dropped the test tube.
Yeah, and, especially for you having, what you're coming off of, and Claire being, older with difficulties, I understand why people like to do that. But if you're young, you're healthy, and you're observing, decent health care precautions, they've shown over and over that people aren't getting it. People who were in the healthcare field and exposed to these people that are healthy and everything have not been getting it. So I just think, the more we spread this paranoia, the farther our opponents are going to run with it. You know what I mean? And like this media people, well, maybe we should be closed a year, 18 months, 2 years. And I think by us, coalescing to this, we're kind of painting ourselves into a corner, because that's what they do. They make you clamor, they come up with the problem, then they come up with the opposition of the problem, and then they tell you, well, this is what you wanted, so we locked you down. And I just can't see America going for that and being viable. I just really don't. But thank you, Michael. Keep up the great show.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to switch over to Sally in Arkansas. Welcome, Sally. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, actually, it's Sally in Alaska. It's Sally in Alaska.
It's in Alaska. I'm sorry. Bad eyes. What can I tell you?
Hey, after yesterday, there was a thing put up that was saying that Trump had turned over the whole country in his presidency to Fema, and that's why the thing wasn't on his podium. But today, I just got a thing from a friend in Vermont, and it's from a place called earthnewspaper.com.
Yes.
BitChute.com, and it talks about how the whole thing that Bill Gates and whatever his name is, the doctor that's been mouthing off, are totally wrong. And I just was trying to get that to you, and I can't get through to you. And so I just called, and Mike said that maybe you had already heard about that.
You're saying that you can't reach my website?
No, I couldn't. They said you can't. I tried your website. I tried, and it wouldn't go through. I tried the phone. Tried to send you a text. Tried to send you an email to your name, and they wouldn't even bring you up. Anyway, it's called earthnewspaper.com, and then this thing was BITCHUTE.com. Like bitch, UTE.
Okay.
.com. And check that out, because this is the most hopeful thing. I'm ready to do a dance, because they're telling that Fauci and Gates that you're way off track. You're globalists, and get the hell out. So I'm very hopeful. Look it up and see what you love. Yeah, you got a great show, and pass that along to John too, because I'm having trouble getting anybody on. Anyway. We're up here in Alaska, and we get sunspots and all sorts of stuff, and who knows what's going on out there. I know Facebook is amping up, kicking people off for it before they even said, nope, you're banned. So see what you can find out.
I'll see what I can find out there. Thanks an awful lot for the phone call here. And before we go back to more phone calls, we're getting a breaking story that apparently 11 Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps gunboats made dangerous and harassing actions against U.S. warships in the Persian Gulf earlier today, coming as close as 10 yards away. So that's just now breaking here. Okay, we're going to go back to the phones to Stephen in Riverside. Stephen, I'm going to have to take you through the next commercial break. What's on your mind?
Oh, well, looks like another provocation, doesn't it?
Yes.
Or another false flag.
Well, it all depends on where that U.S. warship was. If they were in Iranian waters, then the Iranians are acting properly.
Mike, you're in Riverside. The sheriff made a speech and basically said he wasn't going to enforce the mask requirement here. But then he said something that was kind of interesting. He said, and I couldn't figure it out at first, don't call in, don't. Well, it turns out that the mayor of L.A. had made a statement that not only could anybody who went outside without a mask be fined $1,000, but he asked that anybody turn them in. It sounds like something out of Nazi Germany or, Cuba.
Stephen, I got to put you on hold. Stephen, I got to put you on hold, and we'll be back to you after these words from our sponsors. Welcome back to the show here. We're talking with Stephen in Riverside. We're talking about this mandatory must wear a mask decision in Los Angeles, which carries with it $1,000 fine. And Stephen, if you could just sort of pick up where you left off.
Yeah, not only that, but the crazy thing, it sounds like something, you'll get a reward if you turn your neighbors in. Now, where's that out of? I mean, I've never heard anything like that. So if you don't feel
Nazi
like
Germany.
mandatory, Nazi Germany, the Stasi, who knows what. Anyway, Mike, I'll go on to one other thing because I know you've got other callers. There's a doctor, actually he's a chiropractor, John Bergman. I've visited him in Huntington Beach. Anyway, he's put out a local, his latest video on YouTube is control of a virus or control of the population. And basically what he's saying, and I'll just try and shorten it up, is that the PCR test is it's 40 years old. It has false positive rates of up to 80%, 50 to 80%. It was used originally to test for HIV. And so that's why you've got these soaring infection rates, is because the more people that get it, the more are going to test positive. Then, as far as the death rates goes, they're reclassifying anybody who comes in, anybody with a respiratory rate, as they're testing them as though they've died of COVID. In other words, the virus that they want to test for. So it's totally false. The whole thing, and what he said also was the overall death rates, both in Europe and the United States, have for flu this time of year and all the other one. Actually, they've gone down because they're reclassifying these diseases to COVID-19. And just one more thing to Dustin. No, it's not a hoax. It's a plandemic. And with that, I guess I better let you go, Mike, okay?
All right. Well, thanks a lot for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Dirk in Vegas. Hello, Dirk. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Mike. I love your show. Just to add on to what has already been said, I totally agree with the last caller. And sometimes I wonder if Dustin wants everybody to wear a full-body condom for the rest of their lives. Is that the only way we're going to keep everybody safe? Because, safety is so much more important than liberty, right? But what I really wanted to say, I saw a video that our friend Mr. Corbett, James Corbett, did yesterday, and he made an excellent point that everybody is kind of nibbling around the edges on this thing, but what's happening is the people have allowed the governments all over the world to flip the script, where if you're not wearing a mask, if you're not huddled in your house, then you're an evil, bad person. And that has never been the criteria, even back, when America had to endure some major diseases, polio and all these things. But they've managed to flip the script where they're holding people accountable for the transmission of a disease, and that's the culmination of that is going to be the absolute destruction of our liberty, in my opinion. And it's opened the floodgates for the destruction of what's left of America. So that's all I wanted to say. But it was a great video, and congratulations to Mr. Corbett for his presentation. Thanks.
He does very good videos. All right, we're going to switch over to Pat in Fort Worth. Hello, Pat. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, you were talking about Worldwide Wrestling Federation, World Wrestling Federation.
We were talking about World Wrestling Entertainment.
People wanting to be entertained. It's amazing how many people watch this guy named The Undertaker. Amazing. And not only that, he has something he calls a casket match. And he puts his opponent in the casket. So I looked him up one time, and he's got thousands of entries. And right in the middle of it, it was a Muslim funeral. So if a bunch of people are going to die, who knows who they are? People sitting around watching wrestling when the whole world is shut down? Or the Muslims, because, well, what can I say? They don't have God on their side. They think they have God, but he's not the right God. And it's pretty pitiful, in a way. It's pretty pitiful that all this here humor that we think is great coming from America it's not really funny in the long run, is it?
No, it's not really funny, but it does say something about the human condition.
And America is guilty.
Find it amazing. All right, well, listen, Pat, we're going to let you go here. We've got to take a break for commercial. Phone lines are open right now, 800-313-9443, and we will be right back. Welcome back to our show here. The phone lines are empty, 800-313-9443. Now, Bacillus calmette-guerin, or BCG vaccine, is used to inoculate against tuberculosis. And the way it works is very simple. It delivers a boost to the immune system cells in the bone marrow, which are then released in response to all sorts of pathogens. And it protects against tuberculosis, but also is used to treat measles, malaria, keep that in mind, bladder cancer, and it also decreases respiratory infections in older people. And because of this, they're starting to look at it as possibly being an already effective vaccine against COVID-19. And the statistical evidence is showing that countries that use the BCG vaccine have far fewer cases of COVID-19 per capita, as much as an order of magnitude. So it may be that a vaccine for COVID-19 has been under our noses all the time here. Okay, article that came out of FortRust.com. Bill Gates' psychopathology. We don't want a lot of recovered people. And in a recent interview, Bill Gates outlined that despite the comparatively small threat of coronavirus, he and his colleagues don't want a lot of recovered people who've acquired natural immunity. They want us to become reliant on vaccines and antiviral medication, which Bill Gates is heavily invested in. Like I said, they're vampires. They're willing to play with your life to just make themselves a little bit more money here. Now, 80% of coronavirus patients caught the virus from a person who was not showing any symptoms. This is a case study done in China found this, that the disease was being passed by asymptomatic people. That's what makes it unpredictable. All right, as I mentioned earlier to that call, bioweapon research is illegal. There's a treaty that was signed, the Biological Weapons Convention. Unfortunately, there's no verification procedures into it, and the U.S. has opposed verification on 2 separate occasions. But anytime you create a pathogen with aerosol transmission, you've created a bioweapon. Now, the way the U.S. sort of gets around this is they describe all this research as defensive. We have to be prepared to defend against other countries making this horrible biological weapon, and the only way we can do that is we have to make the horrible biological weapon ourselves so we can figure out the defense. And that's sort of the weasel wording they use to get around this thing, along with contracting out to other countries to get this stuff done. the way the CIA will have their torture prisons in other countries for deniability purposes here. But apparently back in 2018, U.S. officials raised alarm about the Wuhan lab researching bat coronaviruses. And this was on the Washington Post yesterday, revealing U.S. officials sounded the alarm about the Wuhan Institute of Virology back in 2018 over safety concerns. They were researching coronaviruses from bats. Okay, this would certainly be welcome in Los Angeles. There's apparently, if you live in the city of Bellevue, Washington, there's an app for that allows you to report neighbors who violate the stay-at-home orders. 4 years ago, when the city created the My Bellevue app, it was touted as being a quick and easy way to report things like down street signs, potholes, streetlight issues, and noise complaints. Fast forward to 2020, public fears of COVID-19 have encouraged law enforcement to turn neighbors into government snitches. An informant, yeah. Anyway, join the modern Stasi here. Italy's unveiling plans for ending their lockdown. The health minister announces phase 2 will involve more testing and continued social distancing as the nation records its lowest death toll for 2 weeks. So it looks like we're definitely getting ahead of this. I think May 1st is doable. And I think the reaction to this whole thing was just totally overblown. Maybe the reason for the overreaction was that insiders knew this was a biological weapon in development. Just turned out to not be very good for all the money and work, you know, like the F-35, for example. Spain deaths have fallen for the third day. Meanwhile, there's a record spike in Tokyo's daily cases. We had the Queen of England was on TV a little while ago saying, "We will overcome this." Article out of Investment Watch blog, coronavirus is now the third leading cause of death in the United States. I disagree. The third leading cause of death is one they don't want to talk about, and that's called medical mistakes. Apparently, the U.S. embargo is blocking coronavirus aid to Cuba. And apparently, China sent some medical supplies to Cuba, but they went through an American contractor who, because of the embargo, refused to deliver it here. 5 years ago, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services tried to plug a crucial hole in its preparations for a global pandemic, signing a $13.8 million contract with a Pennsylvania manufacturer to create a low-cost, portable, easy-to-use ventilator that could be stockpiled for emergencies. This past September, with the design of the new Trilogy Evo Universal finally cleared by the FDA, HHS ordered 10,000 of the ventilators for the Strategic National Stockpile at a cost of $3,280 each. But as the pandemic spreads, there's not a single Trilogy Evo Universal in the stockpile. They all got sold overseas. That needs to be looked into. Apparently, pharmacies are still running out of basic supplies like Tylenol, common drugs. We were at our local pharmacy, still can't find a thermometer. The thermometer section is just completely cleaned out, and they've got a little sign there saying, "We're sorry, we're trying to get more of them in." Totally cleaned out here. Apparently, there have been incidents of looting now in New York City, with all the cops that are calling in sick. And apparently, stores in New York, San Francisco, Seattle, and Chicago are boarding up their windows, preparing for civil unrest. Yeah, if they don't get this country opened back up and back to work, they'll get it too. Apparently, down in Western Australia, they have arrogated to themselves the power to install surveillance devices in homes or compel people to wear them to ensure that those required to isolate during the crisis don't interact with the community. Well, if they want to put a camera outside my front door, let them. I don't care. But I refuse to wear an ankle bracelet with a GPS on it. I really do. Okay, here's more about the biological lab. This is from ZeroHedge.com. A molecular biologist has proclaimed that the Chinese coronavirus could have originated at the Wuhan Institute of Virology and been leaked. leading to its horrific spread around the globe. Richard Ebright, a professor of chemical biology at Rutgers, told the Daily Caller he believes it's a distinct possibility that an accident in the laboratory in China could have caused the outbreak. I'm absolutely in agreement. And by the way, those Chinese wet markets, including the ones near the Wuhan lab, are reopening. Now, they're not selling all the animals that they were selling before, but the wet markets are open again, which tells me that China knows where the coronavirus came from, and it wasn't the wet market. The wet market that was blamed for this outbreak has already been demolished and is being rebuilt. Apparently, over in New York, there's a drone that's flying over the parks, and it basically shouts at people to maintain social distancing. Now, interestingly enough, somebody did a computer simulation showing what happens when you're jogging, and apparently if somebody is following you even at 6 feet and you're exhaling virus particles, they can become infected. So they need to either be in a staggered position, like echelon left, echelon right, or they need to be running side by side with you, in which case everything's going to trail off behind. But I can imagine that's a little unnerving. You're walking or running along the park and this drone comes down and says, "You're too close to other people." Really? Like to see how accurate I can hit this thing with a rock? I really am tired of all of this stuff here. Okay, according to an official with the World Health Organization, and this is before Donald Trump took their money away, saying that lockdowns are driving infections from the street to the household and suggests removal of likely infected family members to dignified isolation. So what they're suggesting is if you're a family, well, we'll use Claire and I. If for some reason they thought I had the coronavirus and Claire did not, they would remove me to what they call dignified isolation, which I imagine is like a phone booth someplace here. All righty. Iceland's lab testing suggests 50% of coronavirus cases have no symptoms. Nobody really knows here. We were talking about the Theodore Roosevelt. Apparently, 4 sailors are now in the hospital. 1 is in the ICU, struggling to breathe. There may be another death there. I think it's time for the Navy to formally apologize to Captain Crozier. There are something like over 500 sailors on the Theodore Roosevelt who have come down with this illness. And as of right now, the Theodore Roosevelt's ability to fight the ship is compromised. And they're replacing the battle group out there in the Pacific. Crozier was right. The admiral who overrode him was wrong. And I think it's time for the Navy to apologize to him and reinstate his command. All righty. New Orleans coronavirus death rate is 7 times that of New York. Probably has to do with diet, other health factors there, down there in the Big Easy. And, pardon me, Rebecca Gee, who up until the first of this year was the health secretary for Louisiana and now heads up the Louisiana State University's Healthcare Services Division, saying, we're just sicker. We've got higher levels of obesity and related ailments that may be part of the problem. And apparently obesity is a major factor in how hard the COVID-19 hits you. And there's a concern that the U.S. has reached its own Chernobyl moment with its failure to deal decisively with COVID-19. This is coming from popularresistance.org. And this cataclysm is exposing systemic failings that have already weakened U.S. hegemony in the world. And yeah, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, COVID-19 has shown how incredibly fragile our supposedly technological society, technological civilization has become. You know, all this interconnected computers and machinery and all of this stuff that we've built around us, and one little virus just throws a huge monkey wrench into the works here. And as always, they're going to bash Russia and China along with this. Apparently, this report from CNBC, Putin is seeking to create a new world order with rogue states amid the coronavirus crisis. In an article published by the University of Calgary School of Public Policy, it's claimed Russia has been churning out propaganda that blames the West for creating the virus. You know, there was somebody who was on Fox News earlier today, and I wish I had caught the name, but I didn't, basically saying it's time to put party politics down and come together as one nation to deal with this coronavirus. And I think the same thing is true with all these people in government whose job it is to make us hate China, make us hate Russia. Okay, we're not listening to you anymore. Because after all, you were the same people who told us Saddam had nuclear weapons. Let's deal with what we need to deal with and stop pushing all these agendas to make the war hawks happy here. Apparently, Dr. Anthony Fauci is receiving personal threats, including violence, and has had to have additional security assigned to him. Remember the State of the Union speech? The one that Nancy Pelosi tore up, calling it a manifesto of mistruths? It mentioned the coronavirus in China. Trump said he was going to take all safeguards to protect the country from the threat. Nancy Pelosi just took it and just showboating, just tore it up there here. And Pelosi, of course, is pushing for a coronavirus response investigation. Oh, it's impeachable. We can impeach Donald Trump. He didn't do what we thought he should have done. We talked about the ending of phase 4. They're already debating a new one. There's a call for an additional $250 billion for paycheck protection to fund companies to keep their staff on staff, even if they're not working. Just keep the paychecks coming, keep everything kind of frozen where it is. All righty. Cuomo has admitted that New York has a stockpile of ventilators, thousands of unused ventilators. Remember when he was asking for 30,000? Didn't need them. I mean, if you look at, how many patients they actually put on those Navy ships, if you look at that Army temporary hospital that was set up in Seattle that was just dismantled without seeing a single patient, this is not the horror that everybody said it was going to be. Yes, there's a virus out there. Yes, susceptible people are sick. Yes, people have died. But it's nowhere near what they were telling us it was going to be. And it's time for life to get back to normal. Let's take a phone call from Stacy in Florida. Hello, Stacy. Welcome to the show. What was on your mind?
Oh, thank you, Mike. Yesterday, during Jeffrey Bennett's show, it was a very interesting concept that he presented to us. He had a lady explaining the executive order that Donald Trump signed, I believe it was on March 13th, putting, the whole country in a state of emergency. And she went on to explain some of the ramifications of that signing of that executive order. And I wondered if any of your listeners or you, Mike, heard it and maybe can comment on it either today. Of course, it's almost the end of your show, but maybe just tomorrow, because it was a very unusual thing to hear. And it seemed very important, but I don't hear anyone talking about it.
This is the one that involved FEMA, right?
Yes, sir.
Well, I haven't heard a lot about it myself, but maybe somebody else can call in with some additional information. And if not, I'll look at this and we'll come back for it tomorrow.
Yeah, so you didn't hear it. You and Claire didn't listen to that particular program, right?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, you would probably be very, very interested in it. Okay, so we'll just keep listening and see if anybody has any opinions on the whole thing. Thank you, Mike, and have a good day.
All right, thanks an awful lot here, and we're going to leave the next phone call until after the commercial break. Meanwhile, Dyson, who makes really good vacuum cleaners, developed their own ventilator in just 10 days, and Mike Lindell has turned the MyPillow factory floor into a mass production powerhouse. We got to take a break for commercials. Back with a phone call after these few words. And welcome back to our show. Last segment of our program today. We're going to go right to the phones to Jonathan in Missouri. Jonathan, welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
How you doing there, Mike? Long-time listener. I've called a couple of times. Thank you for taking my call. I heard your boy Doomsday Dustin bringing up Missouri and his little, hypochondriac response to this whole scenario. Missouri is just fine. There are no big upcroppings of statistics in Missouri for this pandemic. So, as it is, we all know that anyone can take a normal set of circumstances, blow it up beyond reason, the squeaky wheel gets the grease sort of a deal, and all of a sudden that one hypochondriac sounds like he's got the worst thing in the world, and that's what Doomsday Dustin and a few of the people that actually have been adversely affected by this, all of a sudden you get the media involved and this is blown completely out of proportion. But when I heard your little troll Doomsday Dustin get on there and bring up Missouri, thought I'd go ahead and give a call and squash all his nonsense, as at least it relates to Missouri. Thank you so much, Michael. Have yourself a beautiful day.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go here. And as we come up here to the end of the show here, a couple more stories. Apparently, they found 5,000 respirator masks that had been stored for 14 years in the Washington National Cathedral, which have now been donated to hospitals. And I like this next one. Okay. Apparently, over in Great Britain, there's this medical fetish website, for people who like to dress up like doctors and nurses and play doctor in the bedroom, the kind of thing. You know where I'm going with this thing. Apparently, they've donated their stock to the National Health Service, which was a decent thing for them to do here. A lot of people are using Zoom to have meetings and communicate with each other. Unfortunately, hackers are beginning to exploit Zoom's overnight success to spread malware. And apparently Zoom does have quite a few exploits in there, so you need to be very, very careful about that. We're going to try and fit in one more phone call before the end of the show. Carmen in Florida, welcome to the show. Carmen, what's on your mind?
Hi, Michael. That woman was talking about that Fema YouTube video. It's a YouTube video, and the name of it is Trump has given the reins to Fema. F.E.M.A. It's a 10-minute, 40-second video. There's another one. I heard both of these yesterday. There's another one by Robert David Steele. It's called Declaration of Nesara, Nesara / Gesara, Gesare, coming with a question mark. Sasha, Sacha Stone thinks so. It's Robert David Steele and this gentleman, Sasha Stone, who seems to be a very intelligent guy. That was the first time I'd heard him speak. Both of these videos are outstanding, but they each take a different point of view, and I don't know which one. I don't think any of us know at this point which one's going to be true and happen. But I think we should be informed. I don't know of any two that present their agenda better than these two videos. And that's it for me.
Carmen, thanks an awful lot. We're going to have to let you go. We're at the end of the program. Please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Please spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please contact your local talk radio stations and ask them to carry the Republic Broadcasting programming. Please donate. We need your help still. And we'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.